G'day guys, Dean from Blog for the Blood God here, and today I want to share some advice that I received when I was an up-and-comer at the 40k competitive tournament scene that really helped supercharge my results and really helped me step up into that next level. So this is advice that's going to be very useful for any tournament player, regardless of what your current standings are. It's going to help you increase them by at least 10%, and it's very, very useful information. So basically what I want to talk about is the importance of recording your own scores in every game that you play at a tournament. Now, often you'll get to the table and your opponent will have a score sheet, or they'll have an app, or they'll have some method in which they're going to record the scores, and they'll ask you like, what are your secondaries, and they'll write it all down and they'll do that. I want to talk to you about why it's important for you to do it in every game. Regardless of whether your opponent's doing it, you need to do it in every game. I want to talk to you about some of the advantages and some of the benefits that you'll get if you record your own scores. I want to talk to you about some of the methods that you can use when recording your own scores. And I want to talk to you about just generally why this is such an important thing and how you can use it to actually generate better results and how you can use it to get better scores in games. So really important, really easy skill to master as well. And it's guaranteed to work. It works across any faction and it's a huge benefit. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Alright, g'day guys, I've got another video for you today that I think many people are going to get a lot of value out of this one, because this applies regardless of which legion you play. It actually applies regardless of which faction you play, and that is the importance of keeping your very own scorecard. Now, this is something that when I first started doing this, I saw a dramatic improvement in my 40k results. And it's something that's so insanely simple, yet I see so few players actually do this that I think it's worth sharing, and it's definitely something worth doing. So if you listen to this video to completion, there will be several parts in there that are very actionable advice that I highly recommend everybody start doing, regardless of how well you perform at tournaments. If you're a top tier player, you'll get even better if you start doing this. If you're a mid-tier player, you might make it into the top tier by doing this. So really important that you take on board these notes. I think you'll find that they will definitely increase your scores and your placings at tournaments. And the simple advice is to keep your very own scorecard. So if you rock up to the table and your opponent's got a scorecard with them and they're like, oh yeah, cool, I'll record the scores here, or they've got an app or something like that and they're like, yeah, I'll record the scores, say, yeah, no worries, I'm going to record them as well though, right? And there's innumerable ways that you can do this. You can print out, the scorecards that are available on the WTC website, which I'll put a link to in the description. They're very good. Or you can, bring a notebook and just handwrite stuff in there. I personally carry a little whiteboard with me, which I use for recording the scores in every game, and then I just wipe them at the end of the game. It's probably worth, if you're developing a new faction or something like that, to bring a notebook, because then you'll keep your records, and then after the tournament you can look back on it and you can go, wow, I took grind them down in every game and I got an average of like 6 points, so grind them down's bad for my army. Like you can reflect on your data. That's a whole different conversation about data and how to analyze your results and how to use that to focus improvement. What I want to talk about today is the actual keeping of the scores and how important that is. So basically what you do is you tell your opponent, yeah, no worries, you can record the scores all you want. I'm going to record them as well. And then when you pick your secondary objectives, you write down your 3 secondary objectives. You write down their 3 secondary objectives. You record the primary turn by turn. You record the command point usage turn by turn. And then basically what you do, this forces you to go to that scorecard at the end of their turn and at the end of your turn and at the start of the battle round and at all of these various times during the game. If you're recording scores, it forces you to go to that scorecard, which then in turn gives you a refresher on the objectives in the game and the mission. So if you go to the scorecard at the start of your turn and you go, okay, cool, I need to get grind them down. I need to get, behind enemy lines, and I need to get Psychic Ritual, right? For example, let's just say they're the 3 secondaries you picked, right? Well, then okay, I've had a refresher. What are my opponent's 3 secondaries? What are they trying to get? And then you can go, okay, what's my game plan for how I'm going to achieve mine while minimizing theirs? And then you can execute the game plan. Whereas if you're not recording the scores, you'll be tempted to just go off memory, and you'll go, okay, it's my turn. I know that I've got this and that, so I'm going to move out and do that and blah, blah, blah. But you might forget, oh, wait, they had engage on all fronts. And I could have very easily killed that one Viper over there. And if I killed that one Viper, they wouldn't have been able to jump into this quarter, and then they wouldn't have been able to score engage. But because you didn't look at the scorecard and you were just going off memory and just focusing on what you have to do, you missed that opportunity to deny your opponent points, Or you might, completely forget a Psychic secondary, or I've seen top tier players, premium quality players that have won tournaments in the past. I've seen them do things like forget to do their Psychic action. And I think part of that is because the games where that happened, I was recording the scores, they were not. And because they weren't recording the scores, they weren't regularly going back to that scorecard and getting a regular refresher on what they need to do. So it's really, really useful to do that. Record your scores, you'll get a refresher at the start of every turn, at the end of every turn, at the start of every battle round, at all of the times when you need to record scores. You'll get that refresher. And you also, the other part about it is if you're recording the scores, your opponent can't fudge the scores. Now, this is something that hopefully doesn't happen very often. I fear that it does, but hopefully it's not a very common occurrence. But if your opponent's recording the scores and you're not, there's always the possibility that they're going to give themselves extra points that they didn't actually achieve. And if you only review it at the end of the game, and they go, oh, yeah, cool, I got 12 on engage on all fronts, and you're just like, did you though? Like, I'm pretty sure in turn 2 you were only in those quarters. And they're like, man, this is my score, like I got this score. And it's really hard for you to challenge it because you're not recording it, and therefore it's very easy for them to just do that and bump up their scores, unfairly. So I highly recommend recording it. Now, a lot of these WTC style mission sheets that you'll see, they just have like a spot where you write in your secondary and then 15 boxes that you essentially tick when you get those points. That's a fair enough system. But the system I use is I actually split those secondaries down into turns, which I'll put a thing up on the screen now to show you what I mean. But I split the secondaries down into turns, and that way you can see on which turns who achieved what. So on turn 1, they got 2 points for engage. On turn 2, they got 2 points. On turn 3, they got 3 points. And then on turns 4 and 5, they got no points, right? So they got a 7. And if they then turn around and say, no, I got a 10, you'll be like, okay, which turn are you claiming that you got more points on? Because I've got you down as getting a 2, 2, and a 3, and then a nothing and a nothing. And if you have that detail, then the onus is on them to say, oh, you've missed turn 4 where I actually got 3, So breaking it down into the detail like that really simultaneously it insulates you from them fudging their scores, but it also gives you a little bit more clarity and a little bit more of a grounding at the start of each turn when you go, okay, on this turn I achieved that, on that turn I achieved this. And then further to that, if you do want to go in and analyze your figures post-game, it allows you to go, okay, I'm getting very low scores early in the game, I need to be more aggressive. Or I'm getting very low scores late game, my shit's all dead, I need to be more defensive and more conservative with my game plan. But yeah, so recording your own scores, it helps you insulate you from people cheating and recording additional points, which is a huge part of it as well. There's just so many reasons why you want to be recording your own scores. It also allows you to, you get that refresher at the start of each turn, but you also get to know what your opponent needs to achieve, and that crystallizes your game plan even further. So, yeah, I just can't stress enough how important it is to record your own scores. I use a little whiteboard where I carry it around with me. The other thing that's worth recording is command points. Now, especially in the Nephilim economy, where people are generating command points twice as fast as they used to, but they're starting with quite a lot less than they used to. What I generally do, in the same way that I record the victory points on a turn-by-turn basis, I record command points on a turn-by-turn basis. And what I do is I just literally, above their name, I have 5 boxes, and above my name, I have 5 boxes. And in the first box, I put however many CP they started with. Well, you do 6 boxes, sorry. And the first box, you put however many they started with. And I literally just put them as a vertical line, like a tally, right? So if they got 3, I just put 3 vertical lines, right? And then basically what I do is in each turn, I'll put a vertical line for however many command points that they generate, which is generally going to be capped at like 3, because they're going to generate 1 in your turn, 1 in their turn, and maybe 1 from some kind of command point regeneration, right? So you save room to put 3 vertical lines in each square, right? And then basically as they generate a CP, you put a vertical line, and then as they spend that CP, I put a horizontal line through that vertical line. So basically you could go, okay, so let's say they spend 3 CP pre-game, so they've got 3. So in that first box, you put 3 vertical lines, and then turn 1, they generate a CP in your turn, they generate 1 in their turn, and let's say they don't use any command points turn 1, well then you'll have 5 vertical lines, which represents that they have 5 command points to spend, right? Then when they spend the command point, I put a horizontal line through it so you know that that point has been spent and they no longer have access to it. And then when your opponent goes, okay, cool, I'm going to use this 3 command point stratagem, you'll be like, no, you don't have 3, you only have 2 command points left. And they'll be like, oh no, I've been recording it. And you're like, yeah, well, I've been recording your generation and your spendage, and you don't have 3, you only have 2. And here's what you've generated, and here's what you've spent. You can take it to the next level, and I know some of the like the World Team Championships level players do this, where they actually write down the stratagems that their opponent used. Even if you just like some scribble that you'll be able to look back on and you'll be like, oh, I know that says fucking X. It's just a reminder, because sometimes it will come down to you going, well, no, you spent a command reroll, you use this stratagem to get +1 to wound, you use that stratagem to get, -1 damage or whatever, and you can list off the stratagems that they used, and then they can't deny what happened, And it also protects you from things like somebody claiming that they used a stratagem that they didn't use, because that happens a lot too, where somebody will be like, oh, I used this stratagem to make my Tyranid monster count as objective secured. And you're like, well, no, you didn't, because look, I've been recording your command points and you haven't used that stratagem. So if you write down their stratagems as they use them, then you're insulated from those sorts of things. And it also serves as a reminder to you, because when you're learning things, or when you're trying to focus on things, the actual act of writing something down solidifies it in your memory. And that's why when you're at school and they're making you study and whatever, you have to write out everything. They can't just go read this and now you know it. It's like, go read it and then write about it. And once you've written about it, then you know it, So when your opponent's using a command point to make themselves objective secured, for example, right? If you write that down, you're much, much more likely to remember that they did that, and therefore remember that unit that's not normally objective secured is objective secured for this battle round, and therefore you're not going to try to contest an objective with your Terminators, for example, because you know that the model on that objective is objective secured. So you're going to be like, okay, well, I need to either kill it or leave it the fuck alone. Whereas if you don't write that down, you're increasing the likelihood that you'll forget that unit's objective secured, and therefore make a huge in-game blunder because you didn't factor in their usage of that stratagem. So generally I'll have my whiteboard set up with, areas for command points, areas for stratagems, areas for primary score, and areas for secondary score. And that way you can just record all of this shit in every game. Another way that you can do it is you can record the scores during the game on a whiteboard, and then just take a photo of the whiteboard on your phone and then wipe the whiteboard, and then off you go. You can also do this with a simple spreadsheet on your phone. Almost every phone these days is going to have access to Microsoft Excel, and you can create a really basic spreadsheet that just has, a blank cell for you to enter scores in, a blank cell for you to write down the secondaries. It's up to you whether or not you're more of a tech guy where you want to use, your phone, or whether you're more of an old school guy and you want to use a notepad. That all of these sorts of I guess decisions are entirely up to you on whatever you're going to find most effective. I personally quite like the whiteboard. It's just easy, and it's something that you don't have to pull it out of your pocket every 5 seconds. It's just something that's on the side of the table over there. That's the score sheet, and it's also something that your opponent can see. Whereas if you're doing it on your phone, first of all, your opponent might just think you're being rude and texting while supposed to be having a game with them. But second to that, your opponent can't see it, and therefore they might suspect that you're being dodgy. Whereas if you're doing it on a whiteboard, it's in public view, everyone can see it. He can see if you're making any changes to it that aren't accurate. You can see everything. I think it's much, much better to record all of these things in a public space. The same works for a notebook to a degree. But yeah, so I'll leave it there. That was my thoughts on one of the ways that you can improve your play style and your results at tournaments, and it's hugely beneficial. I reckon my results went up 10% minimum when I started doing this, and the amount of times that I caught myself in game going, wow, thank fuck I came over and checked the scoreboard, because I completely forgot that I took engage on all fronts, and I was totally just going to send in all my units to kill you. But now I remember, because I looked at the scorecard, I actually need to make sure that I have one unit in each quarter, which means that these berserkers are actually going to stay where they are because they're holding this quarter, So whereas I wouldn't have done that and I would have got 0, but instead I got 3, and that's a 3-point, bump in your score, which all you have to do is have that a couple of times and your score is going to go up by 10%, So I strongly advise you give it a go. It is one of those things where it's a habit, right? It's like flossing your teeth. It's a pain in the ass the first 100 times you do it, but then it becomes natural, and then it's like it almost feels weird when you don't do it, right? It's one of those sorts of things where the first few times that you do it, you're going to go out to Officeworks or whatever. You're going to buy a little clipboard or a little notepad or a little fucking whiteboard or whatever, and you're going to feel like a massive dork, and you're going to keep forgetting to do it. You're going to keep fucking it up. But just stick at it, keep doing it. You'll eventually get familiar and you'll get, reliable with it, and you'll start doing it regularly. And when you start doing that, you'll definitely, I promise you will see an improve in your general scores, and definitely an improvement in your placings. Because the thing about improving your placings is all you need to do is win one game that you would have otherwise lost, and that bumps your placings up massively. And in order to win that one game that you would have otherwise lost, there's almost always going to be one game at a tournament that comes down to only a couple of points, Like sometimes there'll be that one game where you only lost by 3 or 4 points, and if you just had have done this one thing differently, you would have got those 3 or 4 points, and you would have, you would have won. So yeah, it can be really, really useful. The other thing, I guess, a final note, is that it's also worth recording on there just various important things that you have to remember. So you might write down, screen backfield. And then at the start of every turn, when you go there and you record your points and you look at your secondaries, you also see this note that says screen your backfield, and you're like, oh yes, I often forget to do that, and I often leave holes in my movement phase, and then my opponent deep strikes in behind me and I'm fucked. So putting little notes like that, just little reminders of things that are important that you need to, master, and things that you need to wrap your head around, that can be a really powerful way of just making those 1% improvements that it sort of aggregate and become a significant improvement once you've factored them all in. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. As always, thank you for tuning in. And thank you to all of my followers on Patreon. You guys are an absolute inspiration, and you allow me to get up early in the morning and get the motivation to do these things. I could be listening to music on the drive to work right now, but instead I'm recording this information for you guys. And that's all thanks to the support that I get on Patreon. You can sign up there for just $1 a month, 25 cents a week. It's fuck all. It's no skin off your back. You won't even notice it's gone. However, I 100% notice it. And the more people that do that, the better I'm going to be able to improve this content. I'm looking into getting a new microphone for recording whilst I'm driving. I'm looking at getting new equipment for at home for when I'm recording in the studio. And then ultimately my goal will be to, once I get enough support on Patreon, I'd like to drop back to working only 4 days a week so that I can actually spend an entire day every week doing more in-depth deep dive videos with more, visual content and more research and just more. Whereas at the moment I work a 45 to 50 hour week, and it can become very difficult to keep up with this content to the quality that I'd like. So ideally I would rather record a video like this not whilst driving, but I just don't have that luxury at the moment. But if you guys show some support on Patreon, then maybe in the future I'll be able to do that for you. So yeah, make sure you head over to Patreon. And finally, if you'd like to show support in a way where you get something out of it personally, I do neoprene objective markers. There's a video at the end of this which showcases them to a degree. I also did a review where I actually physically showcase one in person on my YouTube channel as well, so check that out. Basically they're your 6 inch, well, they're 3 inches either side of a 40 mil, so whatever that is in inches or whatever. It's essentially a 7 or 8 inch marker. They're neoprene, they've got a grippy kind of back on them so that they don't slide around. They're really thin, and they've got about fucking 100 different designs, all of which are based off the different 40k factions that are available to you. Yeah, there's some really ripper designs in there, so I recommend you check them out. And yeah, I'll leave it there, and I'll talk to you guys soon. All right, cheers. See ya. Alrighty guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope you found that as useful as I did when I first heard that information. Make sure you chuck a comment in the comments below if you do find it useful, or if you have any challenges with it, or if you've experienced any of the things that I talked about in the video. Make sure you like and subscribe, all that good shit. It goes a huge way to helping this channel grow. And speaking of growth, thank you so much for all the new people in my Patreon and all of those people that have been with me since day one. It means a lot that you guys support me on Patreon, and hopefully we're going to get to a point soon where I'm going to be able to reduce my workload at work so that I can shift more into being a dedicated content creator. I'd like to spend at least 1 day a week where I exclusively do content creation. But in order to do that, I need a little bit more support in that Patreon so that I can then justify the reduced workload. So thank you for those who are in there. Thank you for all those new people. And let's keep that machine growing so that we can keep generating this content, and that the content can get better, higher quality, and more frequent. So if you've been enjoying my videos at all, make sure you head over. It's only $1 a month, which is 25 cents a week, which is fuck all. So you can do it really easily. It's really inexpensive, sorry. It's very effective, and it goes a long way to helping me grow. So I really do appreciate that. And I just want to say thank you again, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Do your objective markers ever get lost behind terrain or other models and become difficult to see? Do they ever get bumped and accidentally moved during a game? And do they ever spark arguments about distances? Well, not anymore. Introducing the blog for the blood god, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers. Made from the same material as astronaut suits, or maybe military equipment, or probably neither of those things, this 2mm thick neoprene synthetic rubber is tear resistant, water resistant, and is designed to last. But that's not all. The blog for the blood god, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers come in a variety of different designs and styles to suit any faction represented in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These objective markers are a perfect gift for yourself or a friend, and are a perfect way to flex and show your opponent that not only are you a smarter, cooler, and better 40k player than them, but you also have more disposable income than they do. For the low price of $25, you'll get not one, not two, but 6 neoprene objective markers, perfectly designed for 9th edition Warhammer 40k. But wait, there's more. For a limited time only, people who sign up on Patreon to support Blog for the Blood God as a Skull Champion tier $5 per month member will gain access to a custom design service where I will design a unique logo to support their gaming club, like the one I did to the left here for the Potato Farmers local gaming club here in Melbourne. Follow the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.